Watch this.
I can be that voice of change and also share my tribal perspective.
It seems everyone has an opinion on clean energy. Conservationists, economists, and politicians. But what about those with a true stake in Idaho's history? We hear from the future of tribal leadership. The idea of California refugees ruining Idaho and its politics is a tale as old as, well, Idaho. And one where the data doesn't really seem to matter. Well, one website actually shows what's really happening. Need cash right now? Easy access is always within reach with an ATM card. Unless you live in Marsing. Times have changed since the city by the Snake River ended the millennium with its first ATM. Rarely do Idaho's politicians across the board agree on much of anything. But one topic has gelled elected leaders like none other, the Lava Ridge Wind Project. The proposal calls for nearly 150,000-acre wind farm just outside the Minidoka incarceration camp. And when weighing the value of history against the nation's need for energy, well, Idahoans are siding with the land. And Japanese Americans, they're not the only ones opposed to this massive wind farm, saying it will ruin the legacy of that historic site. Indigenous leaders are also at odds with our growing consumption of energy. They have been the stewards of the land going back millennia, and going forward, they want their voices heard too, which is why tomorrow, Idaho Energy Freedom is hosting a pair of clean energy consultants to share their native tribal perspective. Andrew Bartline got a glimpse into what that might look like.
It takes a lot of energy to talk clean and green.
Wind to solar to geothermal to electrical to the water systems.
And that's just scratching the surface. Well known to Chantel Green.
Yeah.
Where the industry's in her name.
Green with the E on the end, like my last name.
It's in her blood.
Jehus, which is Green and Nest Purse. So Jehus Green Energy LLC.
How did you find yourself getting into this kind of work?
First, it's from an upbringing. I grew up in Lapwai, Idaho, and I come from a fishing family. Advocating for our natural resources, our waterways, our animals, our plants, and being able to make those sustainable and learning how to live within is something that I've been entrenched with since I was little.
Chantel made a career out of advocating for her people. She served as the vice chairwoman of the Nez Perce Tribal Council and had a seat on Governor Little's 2022 Energy Infrastructure Task Force.
I'm always a voice for my people, no matter where I go.
Tomorrow, she's sharing that voice with Idaho Energy Freedom and her unique perspective as an Indigenous person, too.
And I advocate for dam removal. That can come with a lot of opposition because that means that we actually have to change what our energy consumption actually is as of right now, and also where the power is actually coming from.
Change, a word and experience Chantel knows just as well.
And that's really what Indigenous people have been throughout the years, is changing and being flexible, and that's why we exist today. You either change or you get left behind. And I speak from the cultural aspect of that because our life way is that waterway.
Do you often find it difficult to get your voice heard on issues like this, topics like this, and also be a representative of your people back home?
Yes and no. If I'm told no in the front door, I'm going to go around the back anyway. So I'm going to figure out a way. I'm a very, very solution-oriented individual, so.
Primarily solutions for not just clean energy.
That's a number one.
But green energy.
We're looking to reverse as much as we possibly can. Again, it's always, in the name of our natural resource improvements.
The event tomorrow will also host Talia Martin. She has 12 years of experience in tribal and federal government waste management, along with renewable energy as well. She's a member of the Shoshone
Bannock tribes of Fort Hall and served as a tribal liaison with the U.S. Department of Energy. So tomorrow, Brian, it's really meant to be an informational session, educational as well. And of course, we're not going to solve the problem with the dams that goes back decades, but at the very least, they want to explain their perspective and of course what they're trying to protect and bring back from a cultural standpoint, because a lot of their values all tie back to that.
Well, I mean, they have been a part of this discussion for a long time, but it does seem like they've become more vocal of late when it comes to the dams. Everyone is in agreement on the wind farm. We get that. But the dams, I don't think you can find 3 people that agree on this.
And the tough part is, too, is she's practical about it, to where you get rid of these dams, that energy needs to come from somewhere.
Right.
And she's saying, well, I'm going to work to help try to find those solutions because, again, you can't just lose that energy and not fill the gap.
All right. Anyone interested, tune into that. Should be interesting. A good discussion. Thanks, Andrew. Well, Californication isn't just a song and an album by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. For years, it's been a term of intolerance used by Idahoans referring to California refugees, those who are moving to the Gem State from the Golden State, for some reason or another. The concern has been centered on the politics and the policies they bring with them. All these people from California bringing their crazy Gavin Newsom liberal politics to Idaho, or maybe all these people from California bringing their right-wing ideas to Idaho, extreme right-wing ideas to Idaho. Those are generally opinions that are really not based on anything that has specific data attached to it. For the first, though, Idaho has released data, for the first time, I should say, Idaho has released some of that data into context, to give us some context into this conversation of where these people are coming from and what kind of politics they might be bringing with them. Joe Paris did go through some of this data and spoke with a Boise State politics expert on the whole thing. The question is, are GOP leaders and Republicans in Idaho correct when they warn of a blue wave coming to Idaho?
Well, Brian, the data I'm about to talk about, it covers currently registered voters in Idaho. And to show data on where people moved from to Idaho, the Secretary of State's office, they looked at records on voter registration forms going back to at least 2004. In the voter registration form in Idaho, it asks people where the voter had previously registered, aka where did they come from out of state. So the data highlights where voters came from and kind of what they registered as in Idaho. Not kind of, but what they registered as Idaho. So let's take a walk over to the data here. You can see there's going to be this big red map over on the touchscreen here. And what we can tell you is that overall the data, it covers 118,702 current voters. And you'll see some states that are darker shades of red depending on the percentage split of people from out of state that registered as a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. You're going to see red, though, because, as we'll tell you in a minute, there's no place that a majority was blue. So California, for example, we can see there's at least 39,558 voters that moved to Idaho from the Golden State over the years. And that is the place that sends Idaho the most people. Of those almost 40,000 people, 29,516, or 75%, they registered as Republicans in Idaho. And Ada County is where a bulk of them moved to. Other neighboring states like Oregon, Washington, Utah, and Colorado, they have a very similar trend in the sense that they send a strong majority of Republicans. The second place is unaffiliated. Third is Democrats. Not a ton of Democrats, though, move from other states to Idaho. 48 out of the 49 other states in the union, they had a majority of their former residents register as Republican in Idaho. The only outlier here that you'll see, it's Vermont. That's right. They are the only gray state on the map, as you'll see here, because the plurality in Vermont is mostly unaffiliated, then Democratic, and then third, Republican. So it's very interesting to see these different breakdowns. And the sea of red that you see across the entire map that we showed you, it indicates that 65% of new Idahoans, they have registered as Republicans, 65%. 21% unaffiliated, 12% Democratic, 2% other. And Boise State has studied the same question through survey data over the years. And Dr. Jeff Lyons, a Boise State political science program lead, he explained to me this afternoon how this data from the Secretary of State's office from voter registration cards tells me how it compares to survey data that Boise State did, and perceptions of people from California.
Kind of aligns with the things that we have been seeing in our survey data through Boise State now. We started asking people back in 2016 or 2017 if they had moved here, where they'd come from, and then we've been able to compare that to what they sort of self-report as their party affiliation. And so we've been seeing survey data that says basically this story since then, but it's really nice to see it in a format like this where you've got just much larger numbers of people. So it kind of confirms what we thought. I love asking my students and saying, what is the state in the country that had the most people vote for Donald Trump in 2020? And they always say, oh, it's Texas, it's Florida, it's California. And so just because of the large population in the state, there are a lot of Republicans in California, and a lot of them are very dissatisfied with how things are going in the state. And as a result, they're looking to leave and go elsewhere. And Idaho is one of those destinations.
So many guessed it was likely Republicans moving to Idaho in some sort of a split, but the data shows it is a heavy Republican split, more than people I spoke with today expected. So a blue or purple wave, according to this data, it's not really a reality across Idaho. So, Brian, this isn't a full picture of growth in Idaho. To be clear, this only counts adults that registered to vote in Idaho. It's also possible people didn't put their previous address on their voter registration ID, and it's also possible that people moved to Idaho, registered as a Republican, knowing that they wanted to vote in those close primaries.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this. And I think a lot of people who are kind of been close to this, who aren't just spewing anecdotes, kind of knew this and saw this for years going back, including Boise State, as you saw there.
Yeah, interesting to finally see the data, though, from the voter registration cards.
Exactly. All right, thank you very much, Joe. There's a lot more going on around the Treasure Valley, the 208, all over the state. We got a mental health event happening tonight. You could also get some free childcare if you apply, and, well, guess what? More people, more traffic. Here's Morgan Romero with the 411.
Tonight, the Boise School District is inviting adults to a conversation about student mental health and suicide prevention. Head of the Boise High School auditorium from 6 to 8 p.m. to hear from experts and ask questions in an open environment. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline anytime by texting or calling 988. Want to work in childcare? Right now, the city of Boise is extending its free childcare application for new childcare workers. Get your license application fee waived, plus free CPR and first aid training. Meridian Road is now open in downtown Meridian after a water main break. The city says it opened yesterday, so hopefully your commute is a little easier. One area where traffic is going to get more congested, the parking lot at the Village at Meridian. All because of some triple animal style. Yup, the Village came out with a plan to control crowds once the new In-N-Out opens. We don't have a specific date for the opening, but the Village says maybe in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I guess we have a traffic theme today. Ada County Highway needs your help naming 3 of its snow plows. You can find a link to submit your suggestions on our website, ktvb.com. Make sure to do it by December 6th. Then the people will cast their votes starting on the 8th. The winners get $100 gift cards. Find out if your name won December 13th. And that's your 411 on the 208. I'm Morgan Romero.
It's been 24 years since a small town in southwestern Idaho ended the 20th century by entering the modern world when it comes to cash on hand. These days, it seems Marsing has stepped back in time. We want to know what you think about the show. Tell us about it. Text the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Always include your name and the hashtag the208, which is how we know it's for us. And how we know it's going to make it to the end of the show? Well, make it smart and don't swear, and yeah, keeping it short also helps. If you do all that, maybe we can share yours. or not, there was a time when Idaho was a bit behind the times when it came to technology. But even then, the gem state was sometimes ahead of the curve for making national news. Well, 24 years ago this week, those two things kind of met at a crossroad when the small Owyhee County town of Marsing was enjoying its first ever automated teller machine. Or were they? John Miller went to find out in today's 208 Redial.
Marsing, unassuming Marsing, down home Marsing. You'd never think it could happen in Marsing.
That's the ATM, huh?
Yeah, this is our famous Marsing ATM.
George Wilson installed it himself.
You had no idea it was going to make you so darn famous, did you?
Had no idea at all. I went to our local grocery store and one of the clerks says, "Hey, take a look at this magazine." And they opened it up and kind of surprised me.
Because suddenly, down home, peaceful, loving Marsing became the tiny town that gets its first ATM and hates it.
We didn't say that.
Who believes what they write in the Enquirer anyways?
Well, I find it real useful.
Apparently, the Enquirer was so amazed that George Wilson installed the town's first ATM that they even quoted him directly. What's even more amazing?
Did anybody even call you from the Enquirer?
Nobody.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So we thought maybe we could quote the Enquirer without even talking to them. How about this for a quote? We regret the error. We are a sort of unfactual tabloid.
Well, that sounds real good to me.
Yeah. Little Mayberry. That's what outsiders call our town, say residents of Marsing, Idaho. You're an outsider. You ever called it a Little Mayberry?
Nope.
So they're saying you guys are like Mayberry, that the town hates the ATM. I mean, I'm worried what's going to happen here. I mean, I feel unsafe standing here with all the raging residents.
Dang machine!
Well, I guess all I can say about that is I feel honored to use this world-famous ATM.
Next thing you know, we're going to have even more people move in, and then they're going to want to put in a street light.
John Miller, Idaho's News Channel 7.
Back then, George told John the town's take on the ATM was actually quite the opposite. It was very popular and was visited by 10 to 12 customers today. Still no stoplight, by the way. Today, that hasn't happened a lot lately. George's ATM, that's been gone for years in Marsing. In fact, 24 years later, Tom Bledsoe, the owner-operator of the Blade Slinger Barbershop on Main Street in Marsing, tells us there isn't a working, accessible ATM in Marsing.
No, not that I know of. Nothing that's accessible right away.
So if you needed some cash in the middle of the day in Marsing, what do you do?
That's actually a big problem. Here in the barbershop, we have to make sure that we have cash just from our pockets or bringing in from outside of the area so that we can have some. Because if we run out during the day, we actually have to stop taking cash payments too large because of that problem. There used to be a bank across the street, but we can't do that anymore.
Okay, so 24 years ago, we did a story on Marsing getting its very first ATM. And now you're telling me that there isn't one that exists.
Yeah, in ways, I think it's getting smaller.
Now, the U.S. Bank, located across the street from the barbershop, as we just showed you, with the only accessible ATM in town for years, well, that closed in July of 2020. It's about to be a dentist office. We did make some other calls around town, and there are other ATMs located in the city that is sitting on the banks of the Snake River. They're just inside places like Paradise Grill and the Poorhouse, a couple of businesses that love puns, but they aren't open 24 hours a day. There's also one inside the M&W grocery store, but they told us, that's where they still sell that National Enquirer, by the way. But they told us today that ATM has been broken for the past 3 weeks. So Marsing, 24 years after making tabloid news, is without a way to get cash at like 8 a.m. in the morning.
What a beautiful view with some of those shots. And those certainly are looking a lot more like winter, and we will see more views just like that as we go throughout the next few days, because we are expecting our first widespread snow across southern Idaho. The mountains have seen snow, Magic Valley has certainly seen snow, but Treasure Valley thus far has been left out. So we're already starting to see some of that snowfall. You can see this view from Tamarack Resort, a few snowflakes there. Hasn't really picked up speed at all or intensity, but we are starting to see some of those snowflakes. So the moisture that's passing through southern Idaho right now is ahead of the main system. You can see the bulk of that moisture just coming onshore. So expect that to continue as we go into the evening tonight and into the overnight hours. So tonight, as you leave from work, you can see that we're expecting, again, those light snowfall, a couple snowflakes, but we are going to see those temperatures get close to freezing. So some spots could be a little slippery where that is picking up a little bit more steam. But as we go into tomorrow, we're expecting those light accumulations on valley floors. But as we go into later in the weekend, we have multiple rounds that we're expecting. And so as we go forward in time, we're going to see warmer conditions. And so for valleys, that means we're going to see more of that rain snow mix towards the end of that time period. However, in the mountains, we are talking big time snow, double-digit numbers for some areas and several feet in isolated spots. So that's the reason why we have some winter weather alerts in place. The winter weather advisories for the light snow accumulation in the valleys, winter storm watches for that excessive snowfall in the west central mountains and the Boise Mountains. So if we want to take a look at how that will play out as far as timing goes, you can see that things, again, staying light for the evening hours, but then continuing. And so by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, that's when we're expecting that first widespread snow. Then we see another round as we go into the afternoon hours, but you can see very busy weather is ahead for us.
All right, got several comments to get through today on this Thursday. First one I want to talk about is the comment on the story we did with the wind farm in Minidoka and, of course, the Native perspective on clean energy across the state of Idaho. While I feel for our Native Americans and those Japanese Americans who suffered in Minidoka, if we don't find ways of generating clean energy, there won't be Native lands and historic monuments to appreciate, says David in Boise. Perhaps no humans to appreciate them either. But yes, it is about taking everybody's take on it and considering, well, their view and also their stake in this state of Idaho and across the country. I left California, says Scott, and it wasn't due to the weather, depending on what weather you're talking about. So that seems to be the take on a lot of people, saying that they moved here because of the politics in California, and the evidence is showing that Republicans moving to Idaho in waves. Californians moved here because they could sell their home, million-dollar homes and buy the same home here for half. But they do have to register Republican if they do want to vote, says Ken. That's a good, well, if they want the primary vote to count. That's kind of how it works and kind of the, I guess, the downside of that, closing primaries. But maybe these days it's like 2/3 of what they paid for in California, considering the price of homes here in Idaho. However, many of those Republicans from California must be refreshingly moderate, says Julie, because, well, evidenced by the recent school board, library board, and mayoral elections. Julie says, welcome. Welcome. We'll see you tomorrow.